The First Book of Moses, Bereshith, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Shishak rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'um, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayas, or the Paleo-Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures.
Hey Noel, it's Jenna.
Hey Jenna.
So, maybe since there's a little airtime tonight, maybe you could help me with what I messaged you about the other day. I don't know if you have any videos on that or anything about like the Anunnaki or stuff like that, but I really got like on a rabbit trail going down, and I know you sent me over to like Dr. Michael Heiser and stuff like that, and I started watching a couple of those things, but
yes.
like,
So help me out with the Anunnaki. What was it specifically that really tripped you up?
Okay, so I was watching Zachariah Sitchin and Jordan Maxwell, and they were talking about like Enki and Anil and Antu or Anu, and that they were saying that they were the creator gods, that the Almighty God, I guess Antu, I guess is the creator god that they call, brought down Enki and Enlil to create the human species before Adam was created and then put into the garden, and that they are like I don't know if they're at war with one another or something like that, but that one of them is good and one of them is bad, and that like I don't know, we've had it reversed or something like that. And then I was like, well, I thought Yeshua is the one who created Adam and put him in the garden, but who was the gods that said, let us make man in our image? I don't know. I just got all confused.
Okay. So I could probably ask this question in a number of different ways to try to like figure this out, because like, okay, so what if you were to read, so you found out that the Samaritan, the Mesopotamian, Sumerian, I was going to say, I did like a weird composite, like Samaritan, but Sumerian, the Sumerian people believe that there were these gods that created man. So what if you were to read that, like, say, the Greeks believed Zeus created mankind and that it wasn't Yeshua, or that the Germans believe that Odin created, I think it was Odin, according to German religion. And then, of course, you have all across the world these different gods that created man. So what is it specifically, and I'm just trying to gauge this. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what is it specifically about the Anunnaki that really, like, got you, like, your wheels turning, like, oh no, maybe the Bible's not true or something. To me, it's okay. Here's some things to consider about that I love about the Bible. The Bible, and I would going to include the book of Enoch in here, kind of insert that into Genesis 6. You have within the Bible, it tells a story of a serpent that deceives Adam and Eve and gets them to eat from the tree of knowledge, good and evil, and they can no longer eat from the tree of life. So all across the world, in every single culture, pretty much every continent, you have all these cultures talking about the pursuit for the tree of life. You have the desire to eat from the tree of life. It's everywhere. They call it the world tree, different things like that. Even in this room, Sean Walking Bear could talk to you about that from North America and the Cree tribe and the different Native American tribes. You have the worship of the serpents. You find that all the way in South America through Africa. It's everywhere, right? And then you move forward, and then you look at the Watchers incursion in Genesis 6. These gods that came down, and you see it everywhere on every culture. They talk about this incursion. You look at the Nephilim, the giants, you see that everywhere. You go up to Noah's flood. We're only just in Genesis, Genesis 6 and 7 at this point. And you see all these world cultures talking about a great deluge. That in an academia, they tell you it's a myth. They call it the deluge myth. And it's funny that like every culture on the earth has the same myth story. And then, of course, the Tower of Babel is everywhere as well. So my point is that if the Bible is true, you would expect on this grand scale, what it talks about, like the flood, the Tower of Babel, the Watchers, the Nephilim, you would expect to see these tales told all over the world. It makes sense, right? Because it's true. And so it excites me when I see these stories told everywhere, because so the Anunnaki for me validates the Bible. At the end of the day, it's like now. At the end of the day, it's like, what do we ultimately believe, right? Do we really believe that Yahuwah's testimony is true? And I do. I believe that his testimony is true. I believe that. So let me talk a little bit about the Divine Council and the Anunnaki themselves and its relationship to Yahuwah. Pamela, maybe you could throw it in there. I don't have it in front of me or anybody. I need to go back to the general voice chat room here in case you guys are typing stuff up. I was in the newsroom. Apologies. So we learned in Deuteronomy that Yahuwah, he inherited a plot of land, which is kind of a weird passage to think about. That Yahuwah, he inherited a plot of land. It was Canaan. And it was divided amongst the 70 Elohim. So we know that there were these Elohim that inherited the earth, something that's not taught to us in church. These, I believe, are the Anunnaki. I believe that the Anunnaki inherited the earth. And when you're looking at mythology like Greek myth, Norse myth, you pick your mythology. You have these gods. They're all warring against each other. I don't know if there's any mythology out there where they're at peace with each other. Even in the Bible, they're warring against each other, and they're adulterers, they're murderers. You look at the Anunnaki stories; they are like sexually promiscuous. They're actually raping women. They're making like slaves out of people and doing all sorts of experiments, things like that. And also interestingly enough, Yahuwah is completely snubbed from the Sumerian text. Now, in the 19th century, there were archaeologists that were trying to push the idea that Enki might have been Yah, or the Jewish god. That has since been completely dismissed, at least in academia. There might be some conspiracy theorists still pushing that view. But for me, here's the thing that I actually found this very therapeutic. I wrote a paper. It took me like 2 weeks. I did it last spring. I did it on Sitchin's translation. Big thing on Anunnaki, and like nobody talked about it afterwards. For me, it was just one of those things that was on the internet for like 2 hours and then it was gone. Nobody remembers it. But it was incredibly therapeutic for me because I think about people who pursue righteousness. If you truly pursue righteousness, like you're going to be kind of snubbed. Like, you know, you find your friends aren't interested in you anymore, your family, other researchers, you know, that kind of stuff. And I've kind of found this with personal experience. And I personally think that the other Anunnaki just weren't interested in Yahuwah. I really do. I think they were just like, who is this guy? We're just not interested in him. Yeah. And this is where Yeshua shows up, and he's like, look, everything I ever said came from the Father. Everything I've ever done, I learned at his feet. I've only done, you know, so according to like Anunnaki kind of mythology, you could say, I see Yeshua or Yehovah as the Son of the Most High, who was the only one who perfectly exemplified his instructions in righteous living, perfectly embodied his Father in his actions, his words, his deeds. And because of that, because of he inherited the entire world, he became kings and kings, Lord of lords. Okay, so let me touch on a couple more things here. It is interesting that in Sitchin's Lost Book of Enki, which I did, that was in my report, my paper. I did the whole thing on the Lost Book of Enki. Some fascinating things.
Wait, no.
Go ahead.
Can I cut you off 1 second? I'm
Please.
sorry. So you're saying that the Anunnaki are real and that they're also a creation from the Father as well, but they were just like bad or wicked, or they're just they're not real, or they're not.
Yeah. So I think that one of the kind of a devastating maybe fact or misinformation that has, I don't know if it's been a lie. I shouldn't call everything a lie. I think people are just really misinformed. I think one of the most devastating pieces of misinformation that has been put forward in the Christian church and Catholicism and Orthodoxy is the fact that there's just this God and then there's all these like spirit demons. No, like there's many gods.
Right.
There's many gods. They're called in modern Hebrew Elohim. This is what we call Allahayam in the older. And so I sent you to Michael Heiser. Michael Heiser really popularized this idea of the divine council, and that there are many actual gods in the Bible. And this is where Psalm 82 comes in, and he calls them into council. And so literally he actually gave the earth, humanity, over to 70 different gods. So these 70 different gods rule over humanity. And each of these gods were given a specific language. And these are the 70 languages. And he calls them into council, and he says, like, if you do not instruct humanity in righteousness as you are supposed to, you will be judged like men and you will die. And you see the same thing in Enoch when the sheep of Israel, when Yahuwah, he casts Israel, he divorces Israel, and he sends them out. He calls them the 70 shepherds. So the Elohim, the Allahayam, are called shepherds in that book. And keep in mind, Yeshua is also a shepherd, right? So he's one shepherd of other shepherds. And he sends them to his sheep to these other shepherds. And he says, I'm going to take names, and I'm going to take account of every single person that I send to you. And if you harm any of these sheep that you are not supposed to, you will be held accountable. And they're sent out to these other gods, and these gods just start ravaging and destroying them, the sheep of Israel. And he's like, okay, you're going to be judged. And so again, when he sends out the 70 apostles, Yeshua, in the Gospel of Luke, I have put forward many times, the message that he's tells them is to go to these different villages and to proclaim Yeshua is King of Kings. He's inheriting the earth. And if they reject that message, they're to shake the sand off their sandals. And he says it'll be worse for them on that day than it was for Sodom and Gomorrah. I believe what he was doing there is he was sending a message to the gods. And that he's telling these other gods, hey, I'm in charge now. I'm wearing the big boy pants. I'm taking your job. You are fired from your position. You have failed. I'm coming in. And if you do not repent and turn to me, you are going to burn.
So he's talking to the other gods there also.
I believe so,
not
yes.
Just the humans.
I believe so, yes. So
Can I?
go ahead.
Well, are you through?
Oh, Pamela, I could talk all night on this, but Pamela, jump in, please.
I was just going to say that in Exodus, I'm going to throw this out there, and I don't want anyone to their minds to get wrong. But in Exodus 20, it says, Anukaya, Yahawaha, Alahayak. Anukaya means I am. Yahawaha, you're Elahaya. Now, there are, as Noel was saying, there are in Scripture the accounts of these, as I think it was John Q was saying, lowercase, Elahayam. There are other Elahayam. And in fact, in the book of Exodus, in the chapter of Exodus 20, it says, you shall have no other. That is, you're not going to worship, you're not going to serve, you're not going to bow down to these Alahayam, Akarayam. And those two words, that means secondary or following after, or I think of it in terms of second-rate Alahayam.
Okay.
So these are Alahayam who followed after. So
are these like the gods that like other people would worship also? So like were they not really false gods? They were just like secondary gods who should not have been.
These are, as Noel said, there were, these entities, these Elahayam that were set over the earth, and their job was to shepherd, to watch, and to help humanity. And we've seen enough of these, we've seen enough of these Marvel and DC comic. You have these beings that have so much power and so much intelligence, and then they start thinking, they start getting greedy, and they want power, and they want control instead of taking care of. Instead of taking care of the ones who are under their care, they were slaughtering. They used them for their own desires. They were using them and abusing them. And in Psalms 82, you have a record. We have a record of our Alahayam, which is Yeshua.
Yes.
And he's giving them their orders because he is chief over all of these. He's chief over all of these. He is, because he is the son and heir. And we're told this in Genesis 1:1. He's the son and heir. He's the one that has, in Hebrew culture, it's usually the firstborn son who has control over the whole household. The firstborn son always had control over the household. The father would give the orders, and the oldest son, the one that was going to inherit, he was the one who was in control of the day-to-day work of, whatever the family industry was. Most of the time it was, they were shepherds or whatever. And so he was placed over the household. He's placed over the household to take care of everything, and they were under him. All these other Elahayam were under the firstborn son. And so they had to answer to him. And in Psalm 82, he gives them their orders. And he tells them to rule justly and, and do justice. Take care of the ones who are being oppressed. So instead of taking care of the ones who were being oppressed, instead of taking care of the ones that they were supposed to, they became corrupt. And so when sin was found in some, Yeshua said, I saw Hasatan fall like lightning.
Right.
He fell like lightning. So he's kicked out. He's kicked out of Shemayim, Hashemayim, which is interpreted as heaven. But he's kicked out. He's kicked out because there was sin in him. There was pride in him. And so all these entities, they came down, and their name, you've heard of Nephilim.
Yes.
That word means the fallen ones. So all of these, they fell. They fell from their first estate. Jude tells us this. I mean, he's almost copying and pasting from Enoch. But he tells us they left their first estate.
Wait, Pamela, the Nephilim weren't the children of the sons of God who mated with the women?
They're both. They're both.
Oh,
Nephilim.
Yeah.
They're both. Because if you have fallen from your first estate, you're a fallen one. That's a label. If you have fallen from your first estate, Nephilim, humans can be fallen ones. But so these fallen ones, they came down, and to add sin upon sin, they decided, there's been a lot of speculation. They decided to mate with women because, of course, they could not reproduce in their original state. They could not reproduce. But there's been some speculation that when Jude was talking about them leaving their first estate, they became physical. There's a lot of speculation about that. And so they mated with women, and as Noel was saying, it was not. I mean, there were some that were seduced, but most of them, it was not consensual. So and it's not. I mean, there have been accounts in South America, and it's not been that long ago, where some of these offspring were still, forcing themselves upon human women, and then taking the offspring from the woman. If I don't want to get graphic, but so they could. I think they were trying to add to their numbers. That I really do think that they were trying to breed the Most High, and especially against Yahweh. They wanted to start a war. And so it has been this struggle between our Al-Hayah, which is Yahweh, and these other entities who want to who want to kill and steal and destroy. And when Yahweh brought the children of Yasharal out of Egypt, out of Mitzrayim, it was a battle between Yahweh and these entities who did not want to lose power over the children of Yasharal. And so it was all of these plagues were a battle against these different entities. And the one at the Red Sea was actually against Typhoon. He was, it was, I guess you've probably heard of him in Greek mythology. So, yes, Douglas, bad angels. So these are bad entities. These are bad guys. And they're at work, today. They're at work today, and they're the power behind the power. You will talk deep state. This is deep state. And I don't want you to be afraid or discouraged, because we do know that he has said, all power is given to me. All power is given to me. And so the Father has given into his hands all the power, and he's going to inherit everything. It's going to all be his. And then he will I think he will give it to that's what kings do, right? They give it to their faithful servants. They give territory to their faithful servants. So I think that's probably he's going to replace, if he has not already replaced those 70, he will replace those 70. So,
So like, all right. So then, in Egypt, were the Egyptians then serving those fallen gods, and that's why their sorcerers were able to do those powers as well?
absolutely.
Okay. And then in Genesis, so I have like 8 hard copies of different versions of the Bibles, and then also I'll go on like Bible Hub to look at other ones. And some of the versions in Genesis where Satan is talking to Eve, some of them say, you will not die, but you will be like God, knowing good and evil. But a lot of the versions that I have say, you will not surely die, but you will be as the gods. Are those the ones that God had put in charge over the earth for humanity?
Well, they were there. I mean, the one that was tempting Eve was one of them. The one that was tempting Eve was one of these entities. I think it was, it might have been Gadriel. Yeah, Gadriel.
Yeah.
I think
That's
he
what
was
Enoch said.
I think he was the one in the garden. I don't know, but we also have the scapegoat on Yom Kippur.
Azazel.
Yes, Azazel.
Can I?
So what's the proper translation of that scripture? Is it you will not die, you will be as God, or you will be like the gods? What's the proper translation? Do we know?
Yeah. I mean, you can look it up. It's just
I could see it.
double check.
I could see it going either way, really. I mean, if it's right, if it's like, Elohim or Allahayam, I could see it going either way. I do want to jump in. I do want to get back really quickly, Jenna, to Zechariah Sitchin himself. And here's the thing about Sitchin. So he went. The guy started coming out with his translations in the 1970s. He had about a 30-year head start, really, before the internet had the tools to start checking him. Because even when the internet was starting to develop, you had early stuff in the 80s and then into the 90s, they didn't really have the ability. There were very few people who could actually read this Sumerian script back then. And the reason I sent you Hitchin's work, I'm sorry, Heiser's work, his website.
Yeah.
He devoted much of his career just saying this guy is just BS. Now, what Heiser was agreeing that there are multiple gods. There are the Elohim, the Anunnaki. It all ties in with the Watchers, all this kind of stuff. He was in total agreement with that. But where he was saying the Sitchin was just total BS was that he was like, there is no Nibiru. There is no, they're not coming in spaceships. There's no, keep in mind, Michael Heiser, he was a Copernican. The guy believes in globe Earth. He believed it, but he was an amazing guy, because I remember he almost like hated the fact he did this. He in a way he kind of kickstarted the entire flat Earth movement back in 2015. And I remember his video. He came out with this amazing presentation where he's like, okay, this is Hebrew cosmology. The Bible does not believe in a spinning globe or outer space and other planets or other worlds out there, like in Copernican universe. This is what it says. And in fact, all the ancient literature agrees with this. And then, but then at the end of it, he's like, well, we're not supposed to believe it, type of thing. And so all these people started believing, and he got like really upset, when they used his amazing presentation. But this is what he went after with Sitchin. The Sitchin was just making this crap up. He was like pulling things out of these tablets. And so Heiser would go around and encourage all the other translators out there to show how wrong Sitchin is. But the thing is that I mentioned those 30 years. Sitchin, he became almost like this. He became like a legend, the man, the myth, the legend. And was it also with Art Bell? Art Bell, I think, really made him a thing back on the radio in the 90s. And so it's almost like the damage is done. And he's what people refer to when they talk about ancient aliens. And so this is where the entire ancient aliens thing really comes from, is through Sitchin, that they came here and they they seeded humanity and then they left and they're coming back again and this kind of stuff. That's all made up. None of that happened.
Okay.
So if you can read Sitchin's work, and just every time he talks about spaceships and spaceports and space and Nibiru and all this stuff, just cut that out and you're like, okay, this actually makes a lot more sense now. And I will say
there was a lot of things that he was saying that just like did not make sense at all. Like some things I could be like, okay, I could get that. And I only watched like 2 or 3 videos, and then I was like, let me message Noel and ask him first, like what he knows about this, because this is crazy. And sometimes, I have no idea how this even came up on my like algorithm, because I don't even look at stuff like that or even anything like that. And it's just like, some things had made sense, but I know myself, and I know sometimes I could get like in a rabbit hole, and I could, things could make sense to me, and I get myself in a lot of trouble. And I was like, before I even go any further, let me just ask a brother who I trust, who is, learned in this stuff and does his research and everything, because I don't want to get off track and I don't want to get sideswiped, and shaken in my faith. So that's why I had messaged you about that.
It's funny you mentioned algorithm, because it is interesting that like Sitchin's work is what gets pushed. Like the History Channel and the major conspiratorial stuff out there. And by the way, I'm going to be talking about David Icke's research tonight, and it's kind of like everyone pull out your salt shakers, because David Icke's the other guy. Like it's just there's a few guys out there that are the accepted, like the mainstream feels comfortable working with them, and Sitchin's one of them. I will say this though, now this is gonna be a little controversial. And if everyone in the room disagrees with me, that's completely fine. I did state this when I read my paper last spring, and of course it's public. You can go read it for yourself. That I do highly suspect that the Anunnaki did have a part I think it's very possible that they did have a part in the creation of Adam. When it says "let us," now that's the big question. When it says "let us," are we talking about? People will say this is the Trinity. People will say different things. It's the Father and the Son. There are all these different theories, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. If Yahweh is like, hey, Philo Alahayam, brothers from the same, father, let's get together and let's make man. So the idea is that there was already man on the earth, and man and woman. There were many on the earth. And, again, we're kind of going with, official science here, which could be all BS, but this makes sense to me that there was man on the earth. And then, and this is, you can call him Neanderthal, you can call him whatever you want. And some sort of, Homo sapien. And then there was a special creation, Cro-Magnon, I guess. Homo erectus, I don't know, whatever you want, but that we are literally the children of Adam. We are Adam was a special creation, and that's part of the Anunnaki story, right? That the Anunnaki, there was already men and women on the earth, but they tampered with the DNA and the genetics, changed it slightly, and created Adam. So did the Anunnaki have a part in working with Yahuwah to create Adam? I don't know. I wasn't there, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. It's like whoop-de-doo. Okay, great. Yeah. It's the same thing with, I can show you in 3rd Baruch, where it says that when he planted paradise, that it was a group project among thousands of angels. These would be the Elohim, and the sons of God, and he got them all together, and he's like, all right, let's plant this paradise. And like, all right, and they all took part of it. And in fact, Satan, Satanael, he was the one that planted the grapes in there. Of which all grapes derive from today, and including the the same accounts, the olive trees on this earth, all derived from paradise as well, which is, I think an exciting thought. They were planted by angels. So yeah, there's that.
So there's also, okay, so am I correct in saying that there, like in the Genesis 1 account of the creation of male and female, that's different than the Genesis 2 account of Adam and then being placed in the garden, right? Were there other people created before Adam and Eve?
Let's have this discussion as a group, guys. Yeah, I mean, I believe so. Yes, I believe that he created man and woman in that week. Now, of course, because I believe in a recreation account, I believe that there was man and woman even before Genesis 1-2, and I covered that. Yeah. I covered that about 3 or 4 months ago. And they were, killed off. According to, if you read the Colburn, it makes it out like some of them actually survived. I don't know how that was possible with the lights out and water everywhere, but whatever. But yeah, so he created man and woman, and I think that we have past ages where, just to make it clear, I am not an evolutionist, but I'm not threatened anymore by when they dig up these fossils of like little hobbit men and things like that. I'm like, whoop, okay, cool. Like that's kind of cool. I kind of find it fascinating now. Like maybe that was people from hundreds of thousands of years ago. That would be really awesome. Wait,
no, hold on. Kristen just said something that I was actually just going to bring up. She said, don't forget Cain was worried about being murdered. Murdered by who? Other people out there. Like, yeah, who were all the people that he was afraid of if it was just, him and, I guess, Seth at that time?
Not only that, he went and built a city. He built the city of Enoch to rival the other city of Enoch. There's a lot of duality going there. But yeah, it's like, okay, well, what is he building? He had a son at that point, Enoch. But it's like, yeah, what he's building a whole city for his son? Like, obviously not. Yeah, right. So, yeah, there were other people there. So, yeah, that's the idea that Genesis 2, there's a second creation account which confuses a lot of people. And if you line up the two creation accounts, they actually don't match. They're giving different order of events, stressing different things. And so the second creation event. Now I might change my theory someday, but this is where I'm at now, is that it's obviously describing the creation of paradise, a place, maybe it was either in heaven or on the earth at that time, that there was like a whole new, which is kind of goes into Sitchin's work with Anunnaki, where he says the Anunnaki came and they developed the whole Mesopotamian region, right? They made it a paradise. They created it over so many days. So yeah, I think he did have an entourage that helped him do it. That's the whole idea with the king, right? A king, I've been to the Palace of Versailles, for example. The Palace of Versailles in France has the most beautiful, luscious, gigantic garden. And this garden was for the king and his close family. To the king would go walk through the garden, right, in the cool of the day. But the king drew up these blueprints. He's like, "All right, guys, build me a garden." So that's what they did. They went and built him paradise. I think that's kind of how he functions. Just like same on earth as it is in heaven. So that's how he has us build the kingdom, right? He doesn't just snap his fingers. Right. It's just like, okay, guys, I need workers. Go out there and build me the kingdom. And that's what we're supposed to do. So.
Right. So we're his earthly vessels, and then he has celestial vessels also. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he gives orders, right? And we're supposed to obey his commands and his orders. So, I mean, if it is on earth as it is in heaven, and we have to do that here on earth, well, then surely the heavenly beings also have the same commands and orders that they should obey, or else then they have their consequences.
So yeah, and so Adam, of course, was created as a high priest over humanity. It is interesting, of course, he was not created in the garden. He was created outside the garden. He was then placed into the garden. In a couple of weeks, I will be we'll be moving into Genesis 2, and I'll be talking about these very things. And I'm really looking forward to my Adam and Eve series. And I want to just take a few weeks and delve into family and a woman's role, a man's role, a child's role, daughters, relationships, that kind of stuff. And I'm going to be throwing this at you guys, and you guys are free to challenge me on this. And when I finally get that book out that I wrote, the novel, Rebecca is still editing it. I'm looking at maybe May at this point. I don't really know when it's going to get out, but I have a few kind of thematic lines in there, and I talk about the role of the role of men and women, and what I believe they are is a man's job is to inspire woman to be woman, and a woman's job is to inspire man to be man, which sounds very, of course, anti-feminist, and it should be. But what I mean, and when I say woman to woman, I mean lowercase woman to uppercase W woman, and lowercase man to uppercase M man. And as woman inspires man to be man, and man inspires woman to be woman, and of course they are attracted to the womanness and manness of the other, and they're inspired to do greater things. They hopefully unify together into one spirit, the marriage of spirits. But the other thing too is that I say in my novel a lot, and I'll be saying over the next couple of weeks, is that man was born of earth, but woman was born of heaven. And in fact, Eve was created in heaven, whereas man was created from the dust of the earth. And so that shows the complete separation. And this is where the feminist movement really, unfortunately, derailed and got it wrong. And we saw the full the full outcome in the last few years with the trans movement, and how basically the dead end where it all led. But it's this idea of you guys probably all remember when I read from Colburn. I love that passage in the Book of Creation where it says that woman, that basically woman, when the Eve character appears to Adam, that she has this, she's like this divine spiritual creature from heaven, that this queen of heaven that aspires man to do what no other earthly woman was ever able to do, and that this is what separates men from women, and so in a way that women are not tooled for the coarse roughness of the earth. Men were designed to be the hunters and the to be shaped by the gristle and the sharp stone type of thing, but women have a delicate artistic and spiritual beauty and grace that and this is what they completely missed out on, unfortunately, when there became this big movement to have women be conformed into the image of man, when they never should have been. They basically gave up the feminists gave up their heavenly estate, their heavenly body to just become earthly, and that was a big mistake. So what are you guys' thoughts? Anything that was spoken about? You guys agree, disagree that that Adam was or was not the first created? Anything on the Anunnaki? Anything at all?
Yeah, one of the things that Sitchin's, others like Billy Carson and those others, that they have really nothing to stand on when it comes to the scholarly work of textual criticism, and like actually, when you study that line of academic research, textual criticism, you can easily debunk a lot of stuff just with that, and it also helps strengthen your understanding and faith in the reliability of Yah's word. So there's some good textual critics out there who they may not get into all the teachings on, like, or the research or study on some of these topics, but they'll say, look, you can learn about how we can trust that scripture is true, and any other texts out there are just counterfeits. And then the other thing that for me really helps, I wasn't doubting, but it just really cemented my faith in the authenticity of the Torah, is some of the stuff that some people put out there. I think Greg Braden is one. I don't subscribe to everything Greg Braden puts out there, but the Torah code is fascinating. So if you dive into the Torah code, and none of the other ancient texts have this feature that the Torah does, where, the Torah code is just a fascinating rabbit hole to go down into.
Yeah, all this stuff is like so new to me, because a lot of the things, especially Pamela, like what you were saying about, and I think Noel too, about like the 70, that those were like also a warning to the Elohim that we hear on the earth. Like, growing up in a Christian household, nobody said that. Like, they think that those 70 disciples were just 70 regular men going out. So like, that's why a lot of this stuff is very new to me. And, I just want to make sure that I don't go off track and just stick with the scriptures and, and what they say. But, some of the stuff, I'm learning so much new stuff because I'm coming out of, Western organized Christianity, and most of them don't know any of this stuff. So, I'm just trying to, I just want to know the truth. I'm just a truth seeker, and I just like to dig deep. But, there are things in here that you have to seek them out in order to understand what they're saying. And most Christian churches don't do that. They're very surface level, very, very milk.
Well, I grew up in, the Protestant church, and I was told growing up that there's only one God, there's only one God. And we heard it over and over again. And so, it is shocking when you come to the realization that there are these other entities, and that they have been, they've been around longer than we have. And some of them have been they've been actively working for the downfall of humanity, of the race of Adam. So that's a little bit shocking, when you grew up, Protestant and KJV only. That was another thing. And because of the way that the Hebrew was translated into English, and the way that they use words like Lord and God interchangeably, and so that's why there's a lot of people who are confused. They're confused about the identity of Father. They're confused about the identity of Yahweh. And most of the people who attack, scripture, they attack they attack the name of Yahweh, and they attack the name of Yeshua. Is it a coincidence? No, it's not. They don't mind you thinking that there's a God, but so it's a learning curve, and it's a learning curve. This is I'm walking into my 8th year. This will be my 8th year following Torah. And, I grew up Protestant. I decided I wanted to be, to work in the church, and I got my music. Thought I had the answers, and I laugh at myself now. And I got to tell you, when I realized how wrong I had it, that the that the commandments of Elohim, that Yah's instructions for righteous living were true and applicable for us today, and that that I missed it. Reading the Bible, my whole life, learning to read from the Bible, and I had it so wrong, and it was shocking. So we all have a learning curve, all of us.
The learning about the I would call them the Elohim back then, plural. Learning about this divine council back in the day, I was really big on it back in like 2018. Was one of the final stepping stones that led me to the Torah. And here's part of the reasoning is that I was like, I don't know if overjoyed is the word, but I was really excited to learn like there's all these different gods, because the world made sense to me. I'm like, finally somebody is speaking to me, and like I have all these different floating pieces and they click, and the world makes more sense that all these different cultures have gods than they're just praying to, it's almost like Christianity is almost like a part-time atheist, like, well, we pray to the real God, but they pray to the, I don't know, the invisible man in the sky, right? It's like, no, they're actually praying to real gods. And so think about this. Christianity does not hold the monopoly on answered prayer. Okay, that if that was taken on a sound clip right there, that would get me in a lot of trouble. I could just see that, people freaking out. Did you hear what Noel said this week? But it's true that you go to all these different religions all over the world, and they're not stupid. They follow these religions because they actually get something out of it. They see the spiritual reality manifest around them, and it works. And so the reason why that was one of the things that led me to the Torah is that I started understanding this idea that, who you pray to, that these different gods, they actually have laws. And I wanted, I could have chosen, I guess, to worship Odin. I actually met someone recently, in recent years, who claims that he is a priest and a worshiper of Ra. I'm like, okay, if that's your thing, I guess. I mean, if that's what you want. But I wanted to worship Yahuwah, and I wanted to keep his commands. And this is like what Pamela was saying earlier, where he's like, you are to have no other Elohim before me. You are not to, worship me as they want to be worshipped. I have a specific way I want this done. It's all spilled out. So yeah, that got me really excited. I had something else I was going to say about that, but I probably covered all my points.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Do you guys consider Enoch a scripture?
I do.
Okay. So in the book of Enoch, where it talks about the judgments, this is on chapter 90. It says that there were 70 shepherds that were judged and found guilty, and they were cast into the fiery abyss. So the 70 would be the, I guess you're calling them Elohim, because Elohim means authority, rulers over the 70 nations. And so what you're saying, I can agree with to a certain extent, because they were given by Yahweh the anointing to be over the other nations, the nations that were not his, because he has his own. But I'm just not sure that I would say that they were in equal authority to Yahweh. I think he is above all, and they are in subjugation to him. But nonetheless, they were given governance over the other nations.
Yeah, I thank you for welcome to the group, Michelle. It's good to hear from you. I am of the opinion, Pamela talked about earlier, and yeah, so there's all these ideas that they would be judged. Enoch talks about that, of course, Psalm 82, and there's other accounts. I am of the opinion that it was fulfilled. It did happen. And for those of you, if you recall, two of my favorite presentations I gave this year was on the Nazarene versus, it was called Christianity versus the Millennial Kingdom. It was the Nazarene, and showing how the Millennial Kingdom was a Jewish idea. It was a Nazarene idea, and how the Gentile church, those who refused to be grafted in and to call themselves Gentiles, they hated the idea of the Millennial Kingdom, which is very ironic that, you know, the Millennial Kingdom movement today is run by individuals who, again, you know, they're basically trying to take this Jewish idea, but they, you know, don't want the Jewishness, if you guys know what I mean. But the follow up to that was using the Dead Sea Scroll, the War of the Sons of Light versus the Sons of Darkness, and it talks about the war that will usher in the Messianic age, the Millennial Kingdom, and it seems to make it clear in there that these 70, these Elohim that are over the earth, that they were judged at that time. This is exactly what Messiah said in Luke when he said that, you know, it's going to be worse for you that day than Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is where the melting event happens. And so and one of the theories I put forward that I'm still holding to, I put this forward a few years ago, was that you see places that are completely melted. I mean, New Mexico, Utah, that whole area is a great example. You see it all through Turkey and that region, like Eastern Europe and stuff. But then you see places like Rome and others where it was spared. And I'm of the opinion that those places, maybe churches flourished there. Maybe it was rejected in others, but yeah, it was at that time that these original, whether you want to call them Anunnaki or whatever, were judged. Another thing I did want to bring up, according to the Lost Book of Enki, which I really wish there was another somebody else needs to translate other than Sitchin. Like, let's give it like a, you know, just a proper treatment. But the way it ends is that Baal basically becomes the master Anunnaki. He basically takes everything over, or I should say Marduk. I'm sorry, Marduk, Moloch, Marduk, and the Babylonians would brag that he was a god of hundreds of names. I mean, he was just world renowned. He had all these different names. He became a very powerful entity, and interestingly enough, it was at Marduk's so their account of Genesis 6 and the Watchers event, in the according to the Lost Book of Enki, the Sumerians called the Watchers the Igigi. They were only called the Watchers later on. They were called the Igigi, and there were 200 of them that came down on Mount Hermon, and it was a wedding that happened at Mount Hermon, and Moloch was marrying a human woman, and they basically showed up to the wedding, and maybe after he married this woman, which is like totally like Rosemary's Baby material, that's when they started snatching a bunch of women there. I don't know if they were bridesmaids or what, but they started snatching a bunch of women at the wedding. But Marduk eventually, he conquers all the other gods, and he takes over everything, and it ends with the starting of the age of Aries. And Aries, it says, what would belong to Moloch, and then but that age was promised to come to an end. And it's kind of interesting that the age of Pisces, you guys have seen my research on this, the age of Pisces, that the fish, the male and female fish, seems to line up with Messiah coming and taking over in his kingdom. So there's that.
If you had the power to go back in time and choose to give into a ministry that would effectively change the way the world sees an idea, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Well, you don't have to go back in time. What you can do is right now, you can click the link below and give to the Paleo-Hebrew translation effort. What is this? Well, Paleo-Hebrew is the ancient form of Hebrew. When you write Hebrew out, you build it. If I said H2O, you know that I mean water. That's what building a language is. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, they all have this idea, even Paleo-Babylonian, the Paleo-Egyptian, the hieroglyphics, petroglyphs. They have this idea that when you put a certain group of pictures together, it means a word. That's what Paleo-Hebrew was. That's what Paleo-Hebrew is. Pamela Glasgow is changing the way that we view the scriptures. You can help. You can go ahead and click the link below and find out how you can change your life, your study of the Bible, your children's life, your children's children, and everybody who, the whole world, man, the whole world can benefit greatly from this. And you can have the power to help right now. All you got to do is click it and give. And it's good to give. What does the Bible say? James says, what is good religion? That I defile not myself with the world, then I give to the widows and the orphans. Well, we're working on number one. Sorry, number two. Well, both actually. We're working on not defiling ourselves. So hopefully you're working on that too. I'm working on that. But we can give to the widows, and the widows. She's right there, and she's doing a work for you, for us, for the whole world, and we have the power to effectively change the paradigm of how we've seen the scriptures from time immemorial to tomorrow. So do that.